Hey, everybody. Welcome to View from the Top podcast, where we help growth-minded men who desire momentum in their business, their family, and their finances get through the valleys and up the mountain to their very own view from the top. I am so glad you're listening again today with us. My name is Wally, and I've got Big A getting ready to climb up this mountain. What do you say, Big A?
Wally, you get me excited, man. When you come up with an introduction like that, I'm like, man, I could run through a wall right now. I'm ready to roll. So let's rock this thing today. Things going good?
Yeah, things are going pretty well. Big family vacation we took last week. Back to my hometown in southern tier of New York State. Had my daughters, who are all married, a couple grandkids and son-in-laws, and we all stayed in the same house together for a week. It was great.
And you still got your sanity. I got tickled. I told Robin that I talked to you 4 hours into the trip, and you had those grandkids with you.
We took two of our little grandsons.
Great.
Yeah, three and two.
You said, this is great. Sonia's such a rock star. And I said, I'll call you back in 6 hours. We'll see how it's going. And so I've done those road trips. They can take it out of you. But man, there is nothing like these trips with your family, is there? I mean, the memories that you're going to have, your kids are going to look back on this time. And I know it's hard and you're like used to silence and solitude with the kids being gone, but man, you're creating some memories. You're so intentional about that with your family too. And it's inspirational to me. I want you to know that, watching from the sidelines. I'm a few years ahead of you, but I wished I could go back. I'd do some things differently as a result of your example. So, man, you're a good example to a lot of guys watching you. So good job.
Hey, I appreciate that. And we all learn from each other, right? So it's good. Hey, I got a question for you today. I got a situation myself that I've been kind of thinking about lately. I'm not quite sure how to approach it. I don't know if I'm not in the right or wrong, but I don't know what's best or better, or kind of leave it alone. But do you tell, when I use the word friends, I think it's important to identify what is a friend, because someone could say, well, friend is anybody I talk to. Some people think of friends as deep relationships, and some of them think of as acquaintances. And I know that I overthink a lot of things. Okay. Like, I get that. I understand that. Let's just get that on the table right now. But do you tell your friends, or what level of friendship or relationship do you tell people your deep personal observations about them?
So we're not asking for feedback about yourself. You're saying, what is the criteria for the friendship that you're willing to go to them and say, hey, man, I've noticed a blind spot. Yeah. And I just want to heighten your awareness to it. Yeah. Am I getting your question right?
Yeah, you're spot on. And the challenge I have right now is a particular guy that's been a acquaintance, I'd say friend. I spend some time with him every few months. He stayed at my house before, traveling through town. And he's hitting about 60, I think, here soon. And, he's just had this situation in life where he's been talking about making a change for years and years and years and years and years, years and years and years. And whether he makes the change or not, it's not up to me. But I see this thing going on, and I'm just like, how do I point out, in a good way? Like, is it my spot? Is it my place? Is he in a spot where he can? I worry about this stuff. Like, is he in a spot where he can hear me? Right, not just my heart, but also hear what I'm saying. And I want to be able to encourage him, but also point some things out that I think are probably either hindering him from making the progress that he wants to make, or he just needs to shut up about it at the end of the day, right?
Well, what would be the easiest thing to do is just call his name out here on the podcast, and we'll tell him to listen to the show.
If he's listening, I'm a little nervous. I was a little nervous even saying it, because I don't know if he listens or not.
But. That's okay. It's all right. Well, maybe he will, and it'll prep him for the conversation.
I love him, and I appreciate him. I'm just going to say that right now. I'm for him. I am for him.
I know you're for him. You wouldn't even be talking to me about this if you weren't for him, right? Because it takes too much mental bandwidth in order to get into a place. So it's obvious you love him and you care about him, or we wouldn't even be discussing it, right? You'd breeze right by it and you'd move on. So you said a couple of things. You've known this guy for how long? 10 years plus, maybe?
Yeah, 10 to 12 years.
Okay.
Had some kind of a relationship,
Okay.
met for coffee,
Yeah.
call
Sure.
each other, kind of
So
thing.
it's not a newbie, right? He's not.
No.
And then you said something really important. He stayed at your house like more than once?
One time. Yeah, coming through since we moved. Yeah.
Yeah, I would classify somebody that stays at my house as a friend, because you're not staying at my house if you're not a friend, right? Because we have very few people stay at our home. And if you're staying at my home, you're a friend, first of all. You got a decade of experience with him, multiple coffees, interaction. I would probably classify him as a friend for me. Now, whether he's to the level of sharing this or not, only you can determine. Whether he's capable of receiving what you've got to offer is on him, not on you. And so you can't make that determination, I don't think, for him. I think going to him, I think the approach is as important as anything. And I think that's first setting the stage. You can't just go and say, hey, man, I got to talk to you about something, throw it out there. I think you got to go and say, because we've had a decade of experience and because you've stayed in my home and because I care about you and your family, there's a topic that you bring up a number of times. And I just want to get clarity on it and throw it out there and then challenge him to do something about it or quit talking about it. I desire people to tell me those things.
Same.
Because how am I going to get better if people around me don't have the courage to point out my blind spots? They're blind spots. They're called that for a reason. They're blind spots and we don't see them. And so I think that it's incumbent on us to share to this level with people that we say we love and care about. And it sounds like you do, because you just said on this podcast, you love him, you care about him. And I think you owe it to him to go to him and present. It's never what we say, it's always how we say it.
That's a good point.
And I think if you present it that way. Now, on the other hand, let me say this. I think there's degrees of things that I share based on the longevity of the friendship. There's some things that could be devastating to a person's life. I don't necessarily classify this example as something that's devastating to somebody.
I wouldn't say that either. No.
It's a choice. But when you start getting into talking about people's children, talking about their marriage, talking about personalities of certain people, I think you've got to have a really deep, solid friendship to share those things with. And I would say I've got a dozen people in my life that I feel comfortable to go to and share at any level. There are people in my life, and maybe that many or more, that I've got that I feel I've earned the right to be able to go to them and share at the level that you're talking about right now.
Yeah.
And
God's given you, I mean, I've watched you and I'll just tell you, God's given you a gift and it's funny to hear you talk about it because it's hard to talk about our strengths and that we always worried about humility, and we've had conversations about this very thing where you're like, hey, Kevin, well, I want to say this, but I want to be humble about it. Right. And it's like, God's given me this gift. And you do have that where you're able to, maybe not complete strangers, but people that you're able to garner their trust very quickly, whether it's your bald head, whether it's your Southern accent.
These good looks. I don't know.
I don't know what it is, man. But God's gifted you with that. And I know that you've been able to use that to honor and glorify him in just so many different relationships. And you're able to get to cut to the quick really fast and not piss people off so they run the other direction, but lay it out there and they appreciate you at the end, even though they don't necessarily have a super, super deep relationship with you. So you have that gift. I'm a little, not envious is the wrong word, but I'm learning from that as well.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you for saying that. But just kind of weigh out what you would say, kind of rehearse it in your own mind. For me, I would be like, hey, if I'm not the guy, is there a guy that would do this? And if not, I think that we're disallowing him to be all that he could be. And this may be brand new news to him, or it could be something he needs just the nudge to make the decision.
That's good. No, it's funny how I even asked you the question. It's like the back of your mind. You kind of know what the answer is, but I'm putting it out there. I know I've got some accountability, so I got to show myself accountable, follow through. I do love this guy, and I care about him. And
which is really cool. Dude. This kind of works right into communication. One of the things that we've decided we want to discuss today. It's a form of communication, right?
Absolutely.
And it's just the way. Here's the thing, too, is we've all got to make this decision. If you're listening to Wally and I today, you've got to decide if you really love people enough to say the hard things. It's easy to say the easy things, right? Anybody can do that. The person that loves you the most, though, is the person that's willing to say the hard things. And I think about numbers of guys, Alan Lindsay, Charlie Haygood, Hugh Morris, Chris Freeman, Randy Butler, Kevin Wallenbach, our famous Wally on this, are willing to come to me and love me enough to say those hard things. And that's where you grow, right? You grow in those pivotal moments in our life to where people will call you up and call you out and take you to a higher level so that you're all that God created you to be. And we need to be in community for people to do that. So, man, listen, that guy may not like it initially and it may sting a little bit, but he's going to come back and hug you later and say, thank you, Wally, for pushing me. I needed that. And so I'll be excited to hear what the outcome is on this conversation. So I'm excited. Let's dive into communication a little bit. And the reason, I'll tell you, I got a selfish reason I want to talk about this. So it's no surprise to people because I talk about Robin a lot. 43 years of marriage, and even still sometimes now, our communication is not great all the time. I get so busy, and Robin goes, can't you just sit here on the couch and let's talk through this? And then we get into a little fuss, and I don't know, Wally, if you and Sonia go through this or not. Robin just wants me to listen. She just wants me to show compassion and empathy. And I'm all about solving the problem. I'm like, hey, just give me the facts and we'll solve the thing. We'll go on to the next conversation. She's like, I don't want you to fix it. And I'm like, why in the world are we going to talk about it if you don't want to fix it? She goes, I just want you to listen. It's her form of communication. It's her love language, time, quality time, So I'm just going to own it right here. I'll admit it that sometimes I don't want to sit and just listen, but it's really, really important to her. And I thought, I wonder if there's any other guys out there struggling today with communication, either in the workplace, communication with your kids, with your spouse, communication dialogue within yourself, right? Is how are we talking to ourselves about these things? And so, I thought we'd dive in and let's hit just a couple of these topics on communication.
I remember when I came into, I'd been in the mastermind as a business owner for a few years. And then 3 years ago, had the opportunity to come into View from the Top and be able to help from an operations standpoint. And I remember coming in and my style of communication wasn't just to give the answer. And I remember how frustrating in the beginning that was, because you're in that mindset, right? You mentioned that of like, well, here's the problem. Just give me the answer and let's go. And kind of what I had learned over time was, how do you communicate effectively to teach people how to be able to make those decisions, right? Without having to necessarily always rely on just, hey, what do I do here? What do I do here? So they basically teaching someone how to fish versus catching the fish for them. And I think in communication across the board in all areas, there's been many areas where I've had similar experiences with Sonia. You mentioned, with Robin, where you're just sitting there and you're listening. And if you're not in the right frame of mind, if you don't have the right mindset, if you're talking negative to yourself about why you're there, and you just get impatient and you just want to fix it and just get on with things, and that's part of Sonia as well. That's part of her, what do you call it, love language, or a part of the way that we connect, that she knows that we care. And that's not that it's a different level of intimacy and relationship at work or in the ministry. But people you work alongside of in nonprofit organizations, whether it's at church or some other way that you give back to the community. they're people. And I think that understanding some basics about communication and what we're going to talk about today, I don't think is anything that's revolutionary. I don't think there's anything on here.
It's a reminder,
yeah,
right? We all
because
need
we all need
reminders.
to be reminded.
Yeah.
We all need to be reminded to be intentional about how we're communicating ourselves to our, like you mentioned, to ourselves, how we're listening to other people, which is a form of communication. There's nonverbal. So let's get into some of this.
We were talking earlier about with our spouse. I'm going to stay here just for a second because this is things that I'm currently working on. And I'm in personal development, professional development, spiritual development, 10 hours a day with Iron Sharpens Iron Mastermind. All these guys I'm talking to, we're goal oriented. We're doing the program that we call Come As You Will Be, to where I'm really focused on aspirational goals in my personal and professional and, the financial. And so I think about it all the time. It's just like always on my mind, always challenging guys to level up. And so we're sitting in our sunroom, Robin and I, it's been a couple of months ago now. And I was all excited and I was saying, this is what we're going to do. And this is how I'm going to lead. And this is the thing that I want to accomplish. And we're always talking about our goals, I thought. And Robin looks at me, this blank look, and I'm like, what? Like, why aren't you excited about what we're doing and where we're going? And I said, can't you be excited about, this? There again, it's the communication, and I'm making assumptions. And she goes, yeah, I'm real excited about that. I said, well, you sure don't look it. And she goes, no, I'm hearing you loud and clear. I said, what do you mean that? What do you mean hearing you loud and clear? What does that mean? And she said, the truth is, you don't ask me. You just tell me where we're going to go. And Wally, it set me back. I'm like, oh my gosh. And it dawned on me that I do that. I'm excited. I'm in it. I work on it every day.
I don't think it dawned on you. I think the bruise on the side of your noggin.
It's like, oh my gosh. Yeah. And I was sitting there and she was right. Yeah. She was right. I was like, Robin, I'm sorry. Like, I don't do that, do I? And she said, no, you haven't asked me. And there was a whole different conversation out of that. But my point is not to air all my dirty laundry.
Yeah.
My point is that I made an assumption this is where she wanted to go also. My communication in regards to sharing those things is terrible. And so I'm learning as we go, right? So Kevin and I are not here to say we've got all the answers. There's things in our own marriages that we're working on as well, in communication and even in business. But we have to communicate every day. There's dialogue that goes on with your colleagues, your peers, your business partners, your children, your spouse. Constant communication. We've got to be abreast and aware of all the different ways that we can communicate. And so, the part that I fail miserably at for me is I can do the verbal communication. I feel like I can, but it's just being conscious of saying the right thing at the right time, which I don't slow down sometimes. And Wally, I know with verbal communication, like you're a wordsmith. I mean, words matter to you. You even make me mad sometimes. I guess we're going to air it all out here today, but like sometimes I'll say something and you'll come back and you'll dissect it. You're like, well, when you said this about this particular word, what did you mean exactly? And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm not sure exactly, but let me think through it. But I'll be honest with you, it's helped me in my verbal communication to be more selective on choosing the right word. Because I've been guilty for years of just arbitrarily grabbing the word that felt right. But you're completely right. In our verbal communication, words matter and they have an impact. And I've noticed even in our relationship over the years that there's certain things that are more impressionable on you because that word has a significant meaning. So it's interesting to me at the education that we can learn from other people that we're around that's different from us. So don't think you've got to do it just your way and they've got to adapt. Like we need to learn to listen to people around us because it's iron sharpening iron. It's one helping the other. So in your what's the word I'm looking at? Making a difference in the words. Where did that come from? I can't even say the word. So you're a wordsmith, so you'll have the word. So what is the word I'm looking for?
I'm not differentiate. Quite sure. I'm not quite sure.
Differentiate. There you go. There you go. So where did that come from?
I don't know. Even the beginning of the podcast, I just naturally asked you to define what friend meant, right? Because it matters.
You did.
You know?
I didn't even think about it till just now.
Yeah, it's like you're saying it. I'm like, oh my gosh, like I did it literally at the beginning of we started recording. I think that for myself, it's just part of my DNA, how God's designed me. I mean, He designed us all. Yeah. You know, there's categories of personalities, and whether you know, what DISC or Enneagram or needs and values or, you know, whatever type of personality type evaluation or assessments that people have used in the past and kind of type those out. There's kind of categories, right? So we all fall into multiple or, you know, more singular type categories. And I think that affects kind of how we think and how we approach the world and how we communicate. And I know for me, one of my, and there can be, you know, like for all of us, I think there's healthy and unhealthy sides to our strengths and weaknesses and personality styles and all that, right? So for me, we actually had a very deep conversation. You approached me on something this last week regarding communication. We communicate. It wasn't regarding communication. We were communicating, and it was a very deep, personal, about my rightness. It's the order of things. Order matters to me, and there's like a rightness, and that affects all parts of my life, including the words. And so, for example, I have to be careful that, you know, it's okay for me in my order. It's actually more about rightness than order. And I'll explain the difference. Rightness for me is about, like, if I'm going to go to run some errands, I'm very, like, automatically, without even thinking about it, I'm very intentional about, like, automatically, I just like, where's the best way to go? Like, it's not even and at times it's drives Sonia crazy. Because she's like, what does it matter? Like, let's just go there and then go there because I want to go there first, you know? And I'm like, and so we've had to work on that, right? But that's not necessarily words, but it's that rightness of the best way to do something. And then clarity is also really important to me in my needs. And so those two things, I think, have really informed the power of words and communication, especially when it comes to verbal things. I want everybody to be on the same page. I want to know what the definitions are so that we're talking about the same thing. Have you ever had conversations with people where you thought it meant one thing and they thought it meant another? And you
yeah. You know, we've got a mutual friend, Brett Barnhart, lives out in Glenpool, Oklahoma. And he talks about that a lot. And he said that a lot of our frustrations come as a result of our unmet expectations. And that's through even the communication. You know, I know what I said. I'm not sure what you heard. And so it's a big thing. So we need to be sure. Oftentimes, you know, there again, Robin and I get into these dialogues and she'll go, you said this. I said, that's not what I said at all. This is what I said. And it was not the words, it was the way I said it, right? And she felt it meant something differently. And I'm like, no, if I meant that, I'd have said this, you know? It's like, and I'm very forward, and she really is more in regards to you and the way, the rightness, the order, you know, the presentation. All those things matter greatly in our communication. You know, I was thinking of some of the ways that we can really get better in verbal communication. And one of it is active listening. Another place that I've gotten better over the past probably decade, but I'm just going to say it. I used to not listen very well at all. I've become a much better listener, you know, because I coach men, have the privilege of doing that. And so you have to be a lot better listener. But selfishly, I'll tell you the reason I didn't listen as much. I've always owned my own businesses. And I just didn't listen as clearly as I could, because if I didn't want to do it, I didn't do it. I know that's very arrogant and prideful, and hopefully I'm growing through that, but I'm trying to be more considerate. So active listening, my mentor, Bob Warren, was one of the best listeners I've ever been around. He would always make eye contact. He wouldn't have any peripheral distractions. You know, how when you sit in a restaurant with people and they're looking all over the restaurant, you're like, they're not even listening to me. Well, that through the communication, people pick up on that, and they're not going to be. But when you lock eyes with people, you know, you're really actively listening. And I think it's highly disrespectful to not give people active listening. And I've kind of come full circle. You know, it's like, hey, you really owe it to them. They're important. They matter. We really need to do that. The other thing is really expanding your vocabulary, you know, in verbal communication, not always saying it the same way, exactly using the same words. And I think our vocabulary grows through reading a lot. You know, when you looking words up, I used to never do that. And so I'm still guilty occasionally of using words that don't apply. It's like, no, like you said earlier, it's like, I'm not sure which word.
That aren't even in the dictionary. So
I know I make up my own. I got my own words. And so, but anyway, I think it's expanding a little bit more using, a lot of times they say that when you take some of these classes, like public speaking classes, it really helps you to verbally communicate better. So, yeah.
I want to back up just a minute, because I think that you mentioned around verbal communication is that active listening. Mm-hmm. And I just want to break that down for a second. Like, what around verbal communication and active listening, like what are some good examples that we all could be reminded of related to our wives, our children, and in our workplace? Mm-hmm. And I think of, like you mentioned a little bit, a Robin, like at home in our marriages, active listening of actually listening to what they're saying, paying attention, sure, giving space, sure. Making time. I forget who it was, somebody that wrote a book, or I don't know, somebody famous somewhere probably, but I can't give credit to them, so I'm not going to take credit myself. But somebody asked them, like, what was the most important thing going on in their life right now? And they said, this conversation with you. I was like, imagine if we,
really felt that.
Our wives, if our children, when I see this, I just witnessed this, we're at a restaurant. We were on our way to go on a camping trip for the weekend a few weeks ago. And we don't ever stop at McDonald's. We don't eat there just to use the bathroom. I shouldn't say we don't ever eat there. I mean, I do steal some French fries. Not steal. I buy some French fries and a hamburger periodically, okay? Because it's like a little drug. But anyway, we stop there to use the restroom. And I walk in, and I walk by this young family. There's a mom and a dad, and there's 3 kids, one in a high chair, and there's 2 girls. There's a girl and a boy sitting across from the mom and dad. And the little girl is probably the oldest. She's probably 5, 6. And as I'm walking by, she's talking his ear off. And I get it. This is, before I say this, like, I get it. Like, she's probably been talking for the whole 5 years of her life, right? And he's just like, ah. But anyway, yeah. He's on his phone. His phone's right between them. He's not even looking at her. And she's like asking him questions. And he's not even responding. And I went to the bathroom and I came back out. And same thing. I took everything within me not to be like, hey, like, right. Like, do you realize, you. Like, you have this moment with this little girl that in 13 years, you're going to wish that you were sitting at McDonald's exhausted because you're tired of listening to her, and I don't know what the whole situation is. So I can't take it out of context, but I can only report on what I saw. And I've seen that multiple places now where we're not actively listening when someone's talking to us. We're not saying, hey, by our actions, right? Which is maybe nonverbal. We'll talk about that in a minute, but we're not letting them know that they are the most important. I love that. They're not the most important person if we're not giving them our active listening attention. And that goes to our marriages. That goes, I find myself doing that, right? Like last night, I been playing guitar. I have a goal of playing 30 worship songs by the end of the year. That's on my come as you will be. So I'm working at it every day. I've even got the calluses built up to prove it. And so I've been working on that. And I wanted to go play my guitar last night. And Sonia started talking to me as I was passing through the living room with my guitar. And I just kind of didn't really pay attention to what she was saying and went on my own way. And I know that I did that. And so I need to correct that. I need to apologize because I didn't do that well last night. And I didn't give her the attention that she deserved and make her feel like she's the most important person at that moment during communication when it was appropriate. And so I think at work, it's the same way. It's so easy to get busy at work and there's a million things going on and we've got customer calls and we got this problem with this software not working or whether it's because we're building it or because we've leased it and it's just not getting the report we need. And there's a little bit of drama going on always because there's people involved. And it's just so easy just to like not really pay attention and actively listen. I think one of the tools that you can use as a business owner, especially, is the idea of a one-on-one. If you want to actively listen, make a one-on-one, put it on your calendar. Make it weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, don't care. But if you're not doing anything right now to actively listen to the people that report to you, you are not maximizing your opportunity in your business at all. Like you are missing it. And that's so good. Taking that time for that one-on-one and that make sure that, again, just start it. If you're not doing it now, start it, but make it all about them. Listen to what they're saying. Ask them questions that they can talk to about themselves to you so that you understand what's going on in their life related to some level of their personal life because it matters. And then obviously some level of business and their responsibilities and things they have to deal with.
Wally, I've got 2 flags I'm going to throw on 2 different things that you said. And we've got to make a pact right now that we're not going to allow either of our wives to listen to this episode. So here goes the first one. This goes both ways. You just said something, though, that everything in me flared up because of a recent conversation that Robin and I had. So I'm going to just say it straight up, then we'll break it down. So you walk through the den, you got your guitar, you're headed upstairs to your office to practice. This communication thing goes both ways. And in my opinion, don't tell Sonia I said this, she'll hate me forever. She should have seen what you were doing and chose a different time to have that conversation, in my opinion. I'll tell you why I say that. Robin walked in on me the other day. I was watching a hunting show. I was really into it. They were in Canada. They were hunting. And Robin walks in, just sits down, just starts talking right out of the gate and telling me everything that's going on and everything. And she goes, "You're not listening to me." And I'm like,
"You're right."
Well, no, I was watching a hunting show and you just came in and took over. And Kevin, it didn't end well. So that turned into a really long conversation. It ended good. I missed the hunting show. It pissed me off. But anyway, and so I said, okay, let's talk through this for a minute. So it did give me time to go, you know what, Robin, I'm just going to tell you straight up, right? Because that's the way we communicate. I think it's rude that you just walked in here and started talking and just took over the room and you paid no respect to me sitting here watching the TV. See, that serving each other goes both ways. Sure. And there's a courtesy from our wives, right? And so I don't want the guys always getting beat up 100% every time. And so I think that we've got to have those conversations. You know what Robin's done the past couple of days? I've been in and she walks up and after 43 years, I'm like, why didn't you learn this 43 years ago?
Because you didn't communicate it 43 years ago.
She said, we didn't. I was just mad. I was just always mad because she would walk in. She didn't think anything about it. But she's walked in the past couple of days and she'd say, "Hey, I just heard from Holly. Do you have a minute? Is it a good time?" I'm like, man, you know the difference I felt? I felt respected and I felt like that she was being courteous and I felt like she was honoring whatever it was that I was doing.
Good on her.
And I thought that's pretty cool. That's the reason we have these discussions and dialogues about communication. My last flag, just real quick, man, you can't go in McDonald's and just use their bathroom and not buy something. I mean, that is a business. You can't do that. You might as well go take $3 out of the cash register. You took up their parking place. You used their lights. You used their electricity, use their water, flushing the toilet. You can't do that. You got to buy something every time you go in anywhere. I can't do that. A lot of people say, oh, yeah, listen. I say, I got to buy some. I'll buy a pack of mints or I'll buy some gum or something.
Yeah,
Don't ever go in McDonald's again.
I had just
use that bathroom.
Yeah. Side note, I had that experience the other day. We were supposed to meet. I thought we were going to meet online. It was my miscommunication. And we were supposed to meet in person with another guy yesterday morning. And I realized the last minute, like it was supposed to be in person. I'd already made my coffee and we were meeting at a coffee shop. And it was a church coffee shop. So that was my only justification for bringing my own coffee yesterday and not buying something there. But I usually buy something. So I'm with you on that.
You got to support them.
100%.
You got to support them. You know, another thing that we really need to pay attention to is nonverbal, because we say a lot with our facial expressions and our body language. They give clues, right? And I see it on you. I don't know that you'd be a good poker player
Probably
because
not.
we were on a call recently on one of our mastermind calls and somebody said something. And when he did, it was like somebody had hit you with an electrical 220 shock. It was like everything on you lit up. Your face was distorted and contorted over to the right.
It's
and
the
it was
video
like,
quality.
I was like,
it's the
man,
video quality. It's all it is.
I said, that lit Wally up like a Christmas tree, but it's that nonverbal communication. But you know what? I do it with Robin too. I'm just airing our whole marriage out in this episode. But I like, she'll go, why did you roll your eyes? I said, I didn't roll my eyes. And she said, you're doing it right now. You're doing it again. And that, man, we've got to work on that because it says a lot, right? And nonverbal is something that, you know, I'll tell you one thing that's really helped me with the nonverbal communication and doing a better job with my body actions. And so I was terrible at this. When we started our quarterly live meetups where our team comes and we sit and we talk, I knew that because Brooke would often call me out. She'd go, I know, Dad, you're fixing to say something, because I would be moving. I was ready to get in the conversation. And I've been trying to lay back and relax more. She picked up on that nonverbal communication, you know. And you know what we're doing when we do that? We're disrespecting the person that's talking, because all we're doing is preparing for what we want to say instead of active listening. And our facial expressions show it. The way we move, the way we lean forward, we open our mouth and we take a breath, we're getting ready. And they're like, you're not even listening to what I'm saying. I had to apologize to Brooke 2 quarters ago when we met, and she was trying to tell me something that was really important to her. And all I wanted to do is get out what I wanted to say, right? And I kept moving around. Finally, she quit. I don't know if you remember that or not, but she finally just quit talking. And then I had to go back after you left. I had to go up and hug her and kiss her and tell her I loved her and I was sorry. You know, I had to apologize. That's the benefit
of your daughter working for you. Let's make sure everyone knows Brooke is his daughter.
Brooke's my daughter. Yeah, I'm glad you pointed that out. Everybody really doesn't know that.
Yeah,
she
really
is my daughter.
Let's keep the facts straight. Yeah.
Oh, that's good. You know what? Somebody's going to take this out as a sound bite and play it and get me in all kind of trouble about. But you're right. This eye contact, man, we got to make eye contact with the people we're talking to and just pay attention to those facial expressions. And one thing that I do, and again, Robin reminds me, she's working with me on this, is crossing your arms, right? You cross your arms. You know what that's blocking the other people. It's like, okay, hurry up, go ahead, let's go, get it over with. That's what we're saying. Or we'll turn our body. Some things really bug some people and others they don't, you know. And I've noticed a lot of times I'm always in a hurry and I'll turn my body kind of quartered to them. I'm trying to get away. Well, that tells the person you're not listening. The communication is, okay, you're trying to hurry to get away instead of facing them, your arms down, making eye contact. Just be aware. If you're listening to this interview today, just be aware in all the circumstances that you're in, whether it's with your children, they pick up on it. We think kids don't pick up on that stuff. They pick up on that. They're not even sure exactly what's going on, but they can tell you're not listening with your body actions term. Here's the thing, and I don't say this enough, our families really need to be priority in our lives. And I know that's not what this episode is about, but we communicate with these kids and we only get one opportunity to do it right. We don't get a do-over. When they're gone, they're gone. And then the damage has been done. And so if you've not been that dad, you've not been that husband that's really showing with your verbal communication or your nonverbal communication that they matter, try to relax, sit down, make eye contact, put the distractions away. The dadgum phone is always on, everybody. Put that thing on the charger, get it out of the way, and sit there and listen to your spouse, listen to your kids, ask them questions, dive deeper, right? And so it just shows that you really are interested. That's our whole message today, is just proving to others that you really care, that you're really interested in them.
I think the idea of eye contact is underrated. You know, I think we look back at COVID and even before that, right? There's this, it's not natural for a number of people to be walking by someone or be at work in the office space or manufacturing floor or even sometimes with customers or whether it's in our family and looking people in the eye. And I think it feels almost confrontational. Like that's how we've taken it because maybe we've had a bad experience with people looking us in the eye. Because a lot of times it's like, you know, I think about growing up, I love my dad. And I think about there's times when he was right in my eyes. Like I was like, he's right, like, sure. You like, you know, and it's like, well, that's a direct eye communication. Very like, whether you think that's good or not, it doesn't matter. Like that's an experience. And so I think a lot of times our experiences can play into that. But when you genuinely care about someone, even someone you're passing by at the, you know, I'm not even talking about, I mean, nonverbals being on the phone when you go up to you know, pull up to a window to order your food or you go in to pay for gas or you go in the bank or whatever it is. That's a nonverbal cue that you don't care about them. You're not interested in them at all.
Oh, you want your coffee.
Yeah. Yep. And when you look someone in the eye and you say, thank you. Hey, doing a great job today. When you look at that person that, you know, if you make, I forget who it was, I think it was Iger. No, who walked the floor? Was that Iger? There's one of the books we read where there was one of the CEOs where he would
Disney.
I think it's so, yeah, he would intentionally like get out and like, you know, walk the floor kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And actually, no, it was, oh man, who's the guy that does the plane example? I mean, the bicycle example.
It's
about business, right? Front tire, rear tire.
Yeah.
Alan. What's his first name? Anyway, Mr. Allen. Yes, an example of how he'd go out and he'd walk the floor, and he would intentionally the verbal communication, but you can have verbal communication across the room. That doesn't mean the same as getting in front of somebody and getting their attention and looking them in the eye.
Right.
And having a conversation and be encouraging, whether that's at work, whether that's, you know, imagine if we came home from work, whether we work upstairs, outside in the garage, or we have a 40-minute commute, whatever it is, imagine like what it would mean to like I'm not saying every day even, right? But like, imagine what it would mean with our wives and our kids. Imagine what it would mean to if you came home and you walked in and relatively quickly walked up to them, made eye contact, and said something encouraging. Like, that would probably change your whole tone of your whole evening, right? Because now they know that you care about them.
They matter. Yeah. That's all you're doing is communicating. Which brings me to just a couple more things I wanted to mention today, because I see guys struggling with this so much. It's emotional expression. And I think society has really encouraged men to suppress or downplay their emotions. And I'm dealing with 2 clients right now. The biggest struggle in their marriage, one's been married 20 years this year, one's been married 17 years this year. And both of their wives are wanting their husband to share deeply with them emotionally, and they can't do it. And one of them told her husband the other day, after 17 years, she goes, I don't feel loved. He goes, what? You got to be kidding me. And she said, no, because you won't be emotional with me. You won't let me in your deepest thoughts. You won't go there with me. Well, what about you, Wally? Is that hard for you? Is that easy for you? I'm kind of in the middle. It depends on where I'm at.
Yeah.
I can go there, but it's not my first inclination. Like what you just said, that example you just used, I'm not great at that. I'll be honest with you. I don't walk up to Robin and turn her around and grab her and look at her deeply in her eyes. if I did that, she'd think I'm up to something. Yeah, I know. She'd be
that
like,
sounded
what?
really romantic right there. I'm just saying.
I tell you what she'd say. She goes, "It's 5 o'clock in the afternoon." I'm like, "Okay, this is a good time. Anytime's a good time, but this is good." But Robin would love that. She would love for me to sit down. Here's what doesn't make any sense to me. Like, I do get emotional. I cry sometimes. And when I do, Robin comes up to me and embraces me and holds me, and I'm like, okay, I got to work through this because right now I'm embarrassed because I'm a grown man and I'm crying or I'm emotional or I'm sharing a feeling, which I'm not a big feeling guy. But when I do that, I can tell Robin really engages with that conversation. And so, yeah, guys out there, work through that. I always feel like I got to check my man card when I cry. I was like, okay, who do I give it to?
You got to get over that junk, man.
I know.
It's such a limiting belief, talking to yourself.
It is.
We talk about communication to ourselves. That's just a negative self-talk.
No, I know.
Whether it's that negative self-talk about, well, it's not going to make that much of a difference, or she won't care, or he won't care, or that person at work, I'm not going to do that because they're not nice to me or whatever. Like, gosh darn it, just get over yourself. Yeah. Like, control what you can control, make a difference, be kind, be generous. And man, that level of communication going to make a big, big difference.
One of the things that we teach guys in Iron Sharpens Iron all the time is to be more transparent, be more vulnerable, because really it's the foundation for growth. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you bypass those things, you're really building on shifting sand. It's just not going to last long term. And I just want to encourage you guys today, all these things, just work on it in bite-sized increments. So you're not going to get off this podcast and go, I'm going to fix all my communication. Just pick one thing out that we've talked about today and go, how can I improve 10%? Like, what can I do? And make it an ambitious goal to, turn your communication around, communicate with your wife, with your colleagues, your partners, your children, whoever it is that's in your life each and every day. That's what our goal is for doing these podcasts, is hopefully to give you a sense of encouragement. Wally and I both are pretty vulnerable and transparent. You got 30 years of marriage now, and I've got over 40 years of marriage. You never get it to where you're 100%. There's always new challenges. There's always ways that we can improve. But we just wanted to give you a few of these opportunities today to kind of be thinking about a personal evaluation. Like, what is it I can do better that I can communicate and live my life to its fullest? And so that's our objective for doing these podcasts.
Hey, as we finish up today's interview just with Big A and I on communication, just want to remind you guys that the easiest way to connect with us is really through our weekly email called The Climb. You just get it every week. You get a notification about this podcast, and then every other week it's actually a little bit bigger. It's got some great content in there to help you on your way as you're looking for your own view from the top in the climb. So if you're going to love this thing, it's really fantastic. Got great tidbits in there. You can easily subscribe, and if you don't like it, just unsubscribe. It's really that simple. So you can check out at viewfromthetop.com/climb, and periodically there's great resources and tips and tricks in there about how to improve communication as well. So we want to get that constant reminder out in front of us, as we all need it, as we just talked about today on the show. So get free access to the Climb newsletter by going to viewfromthetop.com/climb, and you'll get it next Wednesday. So until next time, have a great week. We'll see you.